is zoology. In this lesson, we're going to look at the characteristics of animals and the classification of animals. Zoology is the study of animals. There are millions of species of animals, and many have become extinct, and many are being discovered every day. There are 9 characteristics that all animals have. First one is movement or locomotion. Some can be motile, like we normally think about. They move around to get food. But some can be sessile, which means an animal is fixed and moves the environment to get food. For example, sponges, corals, and barnacles do this. Here's a picture of barnacles. The second characteristic and third characteristic are support and protection. An exoskeleton can support the outside of the body. It's on the outside and protects the body. The endoskeleton supports the body on the inside. For protection, animals have a body cover. They can be layers of cells, they can be feathers, shells, fur, skin, scales, camouflage, poison skins, quills, and tough hides. The fourth and fifth characteristics are nutrition and respiration. Nutrition is the ingestion or intake of food. Digestion is the breakdown of food. Assimilation is the absorption of food. Respiration is the exchange of gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, and that can be directly through the cells with the environment, and some can be through body covering. Some can be through organs, such as air for lungs and water for gills. The last characteristics are circulation, excretion, response, and reproduction. Circulation is when animals transport materials throughout the animal. Elimination of waste products, reaction to stimuli in the environment, irritability, brain and nerves. Reproduction can be asexual, which is budding, regeneration, sexual, which can be fertilized zygote, goes through the embryonic stage. Some animals have larval stages as well. So when we talk about response, here's a skunk, and they respond to the environment in a stinky way. Symmetry. Asymmetrical animals cannot be cut into equal halves. There's no real left or right to them. Some animals are very symmetrical. They can be cut into equal halves. There's radial symmetry, which means they can be cut through its length, like a clock, or bilateral, where there's a left and right side. So radial symmetry can be seen here with a starfish, where the body parts extend out from a central point. And then bilateral, like a butterfly, a frog, or us, 2 sides are mirror images of each other. When we classify animals, there's an informal classification system that you might be familiar with, and it's just invertebrates versus vertebrates. And here's a picture of that. So animals that are vertebrates have a backbone. They're familiar with things like reptiles, fish, amphibians, mammals, and birds. Invertebrates that are those that don't have a backbone. So some people put protozoa in this. We're not going to talk about them as animals, but some people do. There can also be 3 types of worms that we're going to talk about. Echinoderms, that are those with spiny skins. Some jellyfishes, some snails, mollusks, arachnids, crustaceans, insects, and myriapods. So this is just an informal way, vertebrates versus invertebrates. We're going to first look at invertebrates.
From beautiful butterflies to bashful boa constrictors. From busy little bees to big old buffalo. Our world is filled with so many different animals, with so many fascinating creatures. But as different as our friends the animals can be from each other, scientists have divided them all into just 2 main groups. These are the vertebrates and the invertebrates. Do you know what makes them different? Do you know what makes us humans and many other animals, such as this beautiful fish and this serious-looking little frog, vertebrates, while spiders and other animals such as snails are invertebrates? Well, if you answered backbones, you were right. Backbones are what make the difference. This one is from a dog. Dogs and other animals that have backbones are vertebrates. And animals, such as our busy little buddy here, that don't have backbones are invertebrates. It's that simple.
So let's start with the invertebrates, which make up 95% of all animals. We're going to start with a phylum called Porifera. They are the sponges, and the word porifera means it has pores. These are the least complex of all animals. They contain specialized cells. Means of attaining food is through the water in their pores, and then it's driven through the sponge by flagellated cells. They are sessile. They don't move. They attach to something, and they have spicules for protection and support.
We'll start here by the ocean. It's a great place for having fun and for finding invertebrates, such as this little guy that washed up. It's a sponge, a member of the invertebrate group scientists call the Porifera, that's broken loose from its underwater home. Sponges are the simplest of all the world's many different animals. They survive by taking water in through tiny holes in their sides and then passing it out through larger openings. As this water moves through their bodies, sponges take oxygen and the tiny bits of food they need from it.
So here's a big chart that we're going to use throughout the presentation. It has kingdom Animalia in the center. Then it has invertebrates at the top and vertebrates at the bottom. And then there's different phylum names, and there's also broken down into classes and families and orders as well. So if we started out with the invertebrates, we're at phylum Porifera, which are the sponges. Well, that's them in the top corner, and SpongeBob SquarePants is up there as well. So the next phylum is Cnidaria. That means stinging cells. Examples are jellyfish, coral, hydra, sea anemones, man o' war. They're named because they have stinging cells in their tentacles. Tentacles used are to trap prey and also to protect the organism. They have a polyp stage that's sessile. Some have medusa stage, which is mobile. An example of a polyp is a hydra, and it reproduces asexually by budding.
And here's another interesting invertebrate floating by. It's a jellyfish. There are many different jellyfish and other related invertebrates, such as this little sea anemone. These creatures belong to a group called the stingers, or Cnidaria, because the arms or tentacles that either stick up or hang down from them are covered with stinging cells these critters use to kill the fish and other animals they eat. And here's a chunk of coral I found washed up on the shore. Coral is interesting stuff. Colonies of tiny stingers, such as these, make coral by taking chemicals out of the water in which they live and then using them to build often rock-hard protective homes. Over the centuries, these coral homes can grow to become huge underwater reefs.
So on our chart, we have phylum Cnidaria at the top, and they are the stinging animals. Flatworms are the next phylum, called Platyhelminth. Platy equals flat. That's what that means, flat. They don't have a body cavity. They are asailumite. Examples are tapeworms, planarian, flukes, and they have primitive brain and nervous systems. Mostly parasitic organisms that are sexual and asexual reproductive.
It is in flatworms like planaria that we first see bilateral symmetry and cephalization, the localization of the sense organs in the head region. A pair of ocelli, light-sensitive eye spots, are located toward the center of the head. Lobes extending from either side of the head contain chemosensory cells. Planaria feeds using the protrusible muscular pharynx.
Those lavas, when they melt, they're still kind of like...
The chemosensory cells on the lobes are used to locate the food. Through rhythmic contraction of the muscular pharynx, planaria pumps the food into the gastrovascular cavity with a siphon-like action.
Lava that comes out of Hawaii, okay, which is basaltic lava.
Okay, and on our chart, here they are, the platyhelminth, and they are the flatworms. Another type of worm is the roundworm called phylum Nematoda. It has a false body cavity or a pseudocoelom. An example is a hookworm. It has a mouth and an anus that are present, cylindrical shape, and its separate male and female sexes. It always uses sexual reproduction. Here's a picture of one. And on our chart, it's up at the top there, phylum Nematoda, roundworm. The last worm is a segmented worm that you might be more familiar with, called phylum Annelida. It has a true body cavity or a coelom. Earthworm, leech. Its body is segmented, has a true digestive system, and a true circulatory system.
As you see, I've moved away from the ocean to find these helpful little invertebrates. They're worms, or earthworms to be exact. These little wigglers are a favorite with farmers and gardeners. That's because earthworms' droppings fertilize the soil and help plants to grow. And here's a different kind of worm, a pretty little ocean-living feather duster worm. These worms live in tubes they build, and they use their feathery heads to catch bits of food as they float by. And rounding things out, here's a roundworm. Roundworms are tiny, and they live both in water and on land. While some worms, such as earthworms, help us, others can be a problem. For example, many can cause diseases, especially where it's hard to maintain a high level of sanitation.
So it's the earthworm that is the Annelida. And on our chart, it's at the top, and it's segmented. Okay, we're going to move away from the worms and go to phylum Mollusca, which means soft body. Example are snails, clams, squid, octopus. They have soft bodies enclosed by a shell, usually. Most have a well-developed head with eyes and tentacles. Most have well-developed radula tongue, like organ for hard teeth, for scraping algae off rocks. They have a single foot or several tentacles for moving.
Snails of all sorts, clams, oysters, and other shellfish. This graceful little squid. They're all examples of the soft bodies, or mollusks, another fascinating invertebrate group. And here's a clam I've opened. Notice how soft and squishy its body is. That's how the soft bodies got their name. Even if they have hard shells, which most mollusks do, they all have soft bodies inside.
No, go back and do the third cat.
Widely used as food, you'll find soft bodies, such as this ocean-living nautilus, living both in the water and, like this little guy, on dry land.
Okay, and here they are on our chart, phylum Mollusca. They're the soft bodies. The next group of invertebrates are phylum Arthropod, which means jointed limbs, arthropod. Insects, shrimp, crabs, lobsters, spiders. They have a hard exoskeleton, body in segments, jointed appendages, simple one lens or compound many lens eyes.
Ants hard at work? A millipede on the move? A spider in her web? Or a crab up close? As different as they are, all these critters share something in common. They're all joint-limbed invertebrates or arthropods. This is a huge group that contains more different critters than all the other animal groups combined. Joint-limbed invertebrates, such as this spiny lobster, get their name from how their legs and other limbs are made. They have joints in them, and that's a huge help. Look, for example, at this busy and bold little shrimp. One of the key reasons it moves around so easily is that the joints in its legs give them great flexibility and control. Along with jointed limbs, all arthropods share another important characteristic, and that's an exoskeleton or shell. If you've ever had cooked shrimp, the exoskeleton is what you peel off before you eat them. This exoskeleton protects arthropods, and it helps to keep ones, such as spiders and insects, from drying out and dying on land.
Do you need another attempt, or?
Okay, and on our chart, it's right here, arthropods, and they have jointed limbs, so it can include mollusks, include insects, arachnids, and crustacea. And our arachnids are the spiders. Okay, so continuing invertebrates, phylum Echinodermata, which means spiny skin. Echino is spiny, dermata is skin. Examples are starfish, sea cucumbers, spiny-skinned animals, radial symmetry, able to regenerate body parts, water pumping system, and connect to the tube feet.
The ocean is home to our next invertebrate group. And here's one of its members, a nifty little sea urchin. Our friends the urchins are spiny-skinned invertebrates, or echinoderms. As you can see, the name fits this little guy perfectly. Spiny skins spend much of their time moving along looking for algae, shellfish, and other food. And here's a different spiny skin I've found, a sea star. Notice how its legs radiate out from the center, like the spokes of a wheel. That's the common body plan for sea stars and other spiny skins.
And here they are on our chart at the top. Echinodermata, spiny skin. Okay, now we're at the 5% of all animals called vertebrates, with one phylum called Chordata. They have a backbone and a protective spinal cord, a skeleton that grows with the organism, complex brain, specialization of body system, and jaws for eating.
Or magnetic.
The last and the most advanced phylum of animals are the chordates. Almost all chordates are vertebrates, animals with backbones and highly developed organ systems. Vertebrates are the largest animals, and they come in several basic classes, such as cartilage fish, bony fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. At some point in their lives, all animals in the chordate phylum exhibit three basic traits. First, like this shark, they all will possess gill slits. Second, they all will have a strong rod of cartilage called a notochord to support their bodies. And third, they all will have a tubular nerve cord within their backs. In most types of chordates, such as human beings, the gill slits and notochord exist only when they are embryos and are not present in adults.
Okay, here's our chart. These are the backboned animals. They're vertebrates with backbones called chordata, and all these at the bottom are chordata. So there's lots of those that we're going to talk about, but most of the animals, 95%, are at the top. And here's a final chart that may be helpful throughout the course. The end.